An MVL matchup between two undefeated squads puts a small school conference title at stake. Crosstown rivals on the Muskingum clash to see who can win the Battle of the River. And in our Game of the Week, Jackson looks to avenge last season's playoff loss, while Western Brown looks to play spoiler.
Don't change the channel. Gridiron Glory starts right now. Week 4 has come and gone. Many teams are beginning conference play, so we start getting down to the nitty-gritty. I'm your host, Jacob Mata. It's good to see you. We've got more action-packed football coming up, 6 Showtime games from around the region. We'll make our way through the list top to bottom, and as always, wrapping things up with our Game of the Week. And even more coverage is coming in the weekend ahead. Check out these 4 games on our social media, and we'll even take a sneak peek later in the show. But for right now, we start things off in the OVC. We have senior reporter Chloe G. Workman, who traveled to South Point to get a look at the undefeated Coal Grove Hornets.
Thanks, Jacob. Now, it has been an exciting weekend across the 7-4-0 as a lot of our teams have started out their conference play. But to get right into it, South Point has interesting pregame fun, but there is one thing in particular that stood out to me. This clock that they leave inside their locker room to count down to when they play Coal Grove. The clock was installed over the summer and patiently counted down until it was finally time. A game these two teams look forward to all year. This rivalry is nearing its 100-year mark, and South Point is looking to break a 15-year losing streak to the Hornets. Now getting right into the action. The Pointers made quite the entrance, but that didn't stop the Coal Grove Hornets from taking over this game. Chase Hall had himself a night, opening it up with back-to-back touchdowns and even a 2-point conversion, and that would continue through the game. But South Point doesn't give up. Jordan Ermalovic tries to get things done with an aired-out pass, and he gets the Pointers on the board. They try to get a pass off yet again, but this time, Coal Grove forces a fumble, and Landon Roberts sees it early and takes it to the house. Coal Grove has built a substantial lead, and they don't stop there. Chase Hall keeps that foot on the gas as he carries this one up the side, then blows past 2 Pointers for another touchdown. South Point tries to retaliate yet again, but they are struggling to make any offensive strides, and ultimately that leads to the end where Coal Grove took the victory 43-7. All of those points at the hands of none other than Chase Hall.
Now, Chloe, this team certainly makes a great case in the OVC run.
That's exactly right. We're seeing a lot of talent across this conference this far into the season.
Chloe, it's obvious that this team has an explosive offense, but tell me, how do they match up against the rest of the OVC?
You are absolutely right, Jacob. Power behind Hall, this team has been able to score 196 total points, but their defense seems to be a bit rocky. Up until this game, they have allowed a lot of points, and the deeper they run into conference play, the more their defense will have to hold off those big opponents.
And speaking of explosive offenses, what has Chase Hall been able to do for those Hornets?
Well, Jacob, what hasn't he been able to do? He has 1,100 yards of total offense through just 4 games, and not only that, he also plays on the defensive side and was able to pick up 20 tackles. He had himself a heyday tonight, picking up 298 yards and 6 touchdowns against the Pointers. He may be a Hornet, but he's got that dog in him.
And how will this momentum carry the Hornets through the rest of the season, Chloe?
I'm not going to lie, it was a slow start to this game, but after halftime, this team looked near perfect. They forced several turnovers while running up the score. As they make their way deeper into conference play, I think they will need to get their offense rolling quicker and continue to use their strong points.
It'll certainly be interesting to see how the offense-heavy team plays against the rest of the OVC. Thanks for the great work, Chloe. But that's not all the action for week 4 in the OVC. The Ironton Tigers are welcoming some of the top programs in the country for an intense Saturday slate. The Ironton Gridiron Classic will feature regular season games from Archbishop Moeller, Cleveland Benedictine, and 2 powerhouse teams from Maryland. The Tigers will be taking on Johnson Central Kentucky. The Golden Eagles have appeared in 6 of the last 7 state championships in Kentucky, and it will be one of Ironton's most difficult games on the schedule. Recruiters from all around the country will have their eyes on Tanks Memorial Stadium this Saturday for the day-long event. But as of now, the Ironton Tigers look to keep moving up the OVC after a win over Fairland last week. Fairland was able to get the job done against Trimble, and Gallia Academy ran away with their game against the Chesapeake Panthers. Coal Grove was also able to pick up a win against the South Point, was able to pick up a win against South Point, and the Trojans took down Rock Hill at home for the first weekend of OVC matchups. Now, on to a TVC Ohio game that has some historical value. We had to Bidwell where the River Valley Raiders opened conference play against the Nelsonville York Buckeyes with more to celebrate than just the game. Senior reporter Jack Demler joins us now to talk about that celebration and the action.
Jacob, for the Buckeyes, this game begins their journey towards another conference title. But for the River Valley Raiders, this game means a little more. This year marks the 30th anniversary of Raider football. On September 4th, 1992, the River Valley Raiders played their first ever football game. The game was at home at Raider Stadium in Cheshire against Point Pleasant. And while the Raiders fell 31-22, it started a tradition that River Valley faithful hold near and dear to their hearts. Fans held an anniversary celebration leading up to the game and talked about how important this program is to the community.
I know I graduated in 05, and there was a season when I was in school where we went through a pretty long streak of losing games. We were, I think, like 42 losses, and I remember the game vividly. We stayed, and they had a lightning delay, and we were there until almost midnight before they finished the game, and when we won, we rushed the field. Like, they didn't have any fans left on their side, and our whole stands was still completely full. And I think that just stands to the character of what we are to this community and what this school means to everybody.
Raider Nation looking to celebrate more than just an anniversary, but the Buckeyes come in looking to rain on their parade. After forcing a 3-and-out, Hudson Stalder would take the handoff, redirect to the near sideline, make a few men miss, and he is gone. 53 yards to the house. The missed PAT would make this one 6-0. And after this score, both defenses stepped up, holding each other scoreless for the rest of the quarter. Jump to the second, 4th and short near the goal line, and Williams takes it himself to set the Buckeyes up for the first down, which would then set up this punch in from Stalder for his second tutty. River Valley looking to erase the 0 before the half. Justin Stump would connect with Elijah Perry past midfield, but Leighton Logie is there to punch it out from behind into the hands of Tommy Mitchell, who takes it down the far sideline. And look at those lead blockers just paving the way to set the Buckeyes up inside the red zone. And after Gavin Richards takes a pass to the 1-yard line, Hudson Stalder would tally his third touchdown of the night. NY heads into the half up 20-0, and they go on to win this one 41-6. Now, Jacob, with this game, the Buckeyes now lead the series 14-2.
Yeah, but it looked like the Raiders were able to hold their own early on. Can you run me through that, Jack?
Yeah, Jacob, after the first Buckeye drive, the Raiders defense stepped up. River Valley utilized a middle linebacker blitz to perfection. Keep an eye on number 7 here. On 3rd and 8, Andrew Huck explodes through the gap and gets the sack in the backfield.
But tell me, what contributed to that Raider deficit?
Two things, Jacob. Number 1, the Raiders struggled in the pass game. Stump showed off his arm strength, showing he's not afraid to air it out, but struggled to connect with his receivers. He finished the night 8 for 19 with only 62 passing yards. The other thing that led to the deficit was the struggle to cover this man. Hudson Stalder had himself a field day with 4 touchdowns and 148 yards.
Now, Jack, we have to talk about that crowd on this anniversary. Tell me about it.
Oh, absolutely. You heard Jennifer Rose talk about how much they really rally behind this team, and that rally continued. Win or lose, the Raider faithful is always behind this program.
Yeah, Jack, it's great to see the fans ride with the Raiders through thick and thin. Thanks for the great work. With the win, Nelsonville York is one of 3 teams in the lead for the TVC Ohio title. Vinton County and Alexander also picked up wins over Meigs and Athens. Meanwhile, Wellston is yet to play their first conference game, but suffered a loss tonight at the hands of Portsmouth West. But still plenty to unfold with 6 weeks left in the season. We saw one last conference game tonight, a huge MVO matchup as the New Lex Panthers traveled to West Muskingum to take on the Tornadoes. We welcome in MVO reporter Bryce Titson to break it down.
Jacob, I think this game is huge, and this is one of those early season games that's going to have massive implications in the MVO small school division. New Lex is coming off a dominant performance over last year's big school runner-up John Glenn. They did it with the air attack as Lucas Ratliff continued his hot streak with 291 yards and a touchdown.
West M is on a quest for back-to-back 4-0 starts to the season. That in and of itself is an impressive feat, but it's even more impressive when you look at the state of the program in the 2010s. They won only 7 games in that entire decade.
The matchup between the New Lex offense and the West M defense has the spotlight. The Tornadoes haven't given up more than 14 points in any of their 3 games. Meanwhile, New Lex is averaging 35 points a game this season. The tensions were high in Zanesville tonight for this undefeated showdown. New Lex head coach Kevin Board told me that last season's loss was a missed opportunity, so you knew he would have his boys ready to go. First Panther drive, they move the ball all the way down to the 1. They call Hunter Rose's number, but he loses it. And it's picked up by Slater Samsel. That's a lot of green in front of him, but he's chased down by Lucas Ratliff. The Panther defense, however, responds by forcing a turnover on downs. Next, New Lex now with the ball deep in their own territory. Ratliff sees Tatum Toes with a step, but Jake Anton reads it all the way, picking off the pass. That's now 2 West End takeaways. The Tornadoes offense would not capitalize. Late in the second quarter, still a scoreless ball game. Hunter Rose, how do you do? This man is ridiculous. Look at that spin move. 6-0 Panther lead. Next New Lex drive, just a few seconds left in the half, looking for a 2-score lead, and it's Lucas Ratliff taking the QB sweep way outside the numbers and in for a touchdown. He's fired up as the Panthers take the 14-0 lead, and the offense would keep humming, going on to win 26-13.
Now, Bryce, you tell me Hunter Rose came into this game with a back-to-back 100-yard rushing games. Was he able to keep that alive tonight?
Well, Mata, to really set it all up for you, Rose was a bell cow in last season's game, rushing for 197 yards and a touchdown. But to actually answer your question, yes, Rose easily crossed the century mark. He had 104 yards on the ground before the first half was even over. That included 5 carries of 10 or more yards and 2 of 25 or more to go along with a catch of 25, all in the first half.
New Lex is now 4-0 on the season. Who stands in their way for that NBL small title, Bryce?
The Morgan Raiders have the best shot. They're 3-1 after their close loss to Sheridan tonight, and we've already seen them a couple of times this season, and they've looked really good. Carson Copeland, Cole Searle, and Logan Neiswinger are an explosive group that could give New Lex fits.
We've got both NBL division favorites squaring off next week. What do the Panthers need to do to knock off Tri-Valley?
Well, Tri-Valley is the front runner in the big school. After their win tonight over Maysville and that gutsy win last week against Jackson, they've gone 63 straight games without giving up more than 40 points. That is the 7th longest streak in the state, according to Drew Pastor. Talk about defensive juggernaut. It'll be all about whether or not the Panther offense can move the ball against that tough Scotty defense. So look for Ratliff, Rose, and Toth to bring the juice.
That game will definitely be one for the ages. Thanks, Bryce. Right now, both New Lex and Tri-Valley sit atop their respective divisions within the NBL. Meadowbrook joins New Lex with the top 2 spot after a much-needed win over Crooksville, while Morgan and Coshocton took on NBL big schools for their Week 4 matchups. Sheridan took down Morgan, and John Glenn took down Coshocton. Both teams look to climb in the standings in the week ahead, with Tri-Valley and Philo sitting above them. The Scotties got the win tonight over Maysville, and the Black Bears beat Philo to round out the week for the NBL. And that's a wrap on conference play for now, but the rivalries just keep coming. Over in Washington County, the Waterford Wildcats took the field against the Fort Fry Cadets. OVAC reporter Peyton Brooker joins us now to break down this heated matchup.
Mona, this game in Southeastern Ohio means so much for the teams involved. The battle between the Fort Fry Cadets and the Waterford Wildcats this year will be their 45th time meeting in this rivalry. The reason that these two schools are mainly rivals is the distance. These two schools are only half a mile away from each other and are separated by this bridge on the Muskingum. The fans decorate the bridge with both of their school flags every year for this annual game. Coach Eric Huck has never lost this Waterford team before as head coach and at Fort Fry, and is always thrilled to be coaching at this year's Battle of the River.
This particular game and the rivalry, I think, is alive. That's for sure. The kids know each other very well, and both teams want to win.
The atmosphere for the Cadets Stadium was red hot as this rivalry in the crowd, the student section, and the youth players were all fired up. The Cadets were off to a quick start in the offense as Clayton Miller gets a break and scores off the first drive for a 25-yard touchdown. The Waterford Wildcats then got their chance to get a score on the board, but Jake's Panelli's pass is intercepted by Dakota Snodgrass, quickly returning the ball to the Cadets. 2 plays later, senior Owen Brown breaks away from the Wildcats and makes a statement with a 51-yard touchdown. The Wildcats however, didn't want to be counted out, as Jake Panelli's would get his own interception from Waterford to keep the Wildcats in this game. Waterford did try to make a recovery in the lead in the second half, but it wouldn't be enough. The Cadets would win this one in the fourth with the final score 49-19.
Wow, Peyton, sounds like Fort Fry ran away with the Battle of the River this year.
Yes, it did, Ma. It makes the 15th win in a row over the Wildcats.
Now, Peyton, the Cadets did just have some injuries that could have impacted the score of this game. Tell me about that.
For the Cadets, their last week's game sidelined their main wideout, Braxton Brown, as one of their lead running backs, Austin Powell, relegated to only defense. But the Cadets had enough of their key players to keep the Wildcats defense guessing. Owen Brown controlled the run game for the Cadets, and the season is one to watch throughout the past 4 games, and I'm certain it's going to continue for the rest of the season after this 200-yard performance tonight.
And what can you tell me about the Cadets' offense and defensive lines?
Mata, this Cadets lineman couldn't let anyone through them. They dominated up front and produced big holes for Brown to run through. This discipline and toughness led a huge way were the reason for many of the Cadets' touchdowns. For the Cadets, this victory would be their 4th win in the regular season as they're hoping to make a run towards the playoffs.
Thanks for the great work, Peyton. Our Gridiron Glory fans got that game right as Fort Fry took home 79% of the vote. And remember, you can vote from home every Thursday night on our Instagram page. Predict all the winners in all the games we cover. But let's move on to Washington and Minford. These teams look quite different than they did last year, but you guys had faith in Minford, taking 58% of the vote. SOC versus FAC, did you have the right read on these 2 high-flying teams? To find out, we're bringing on reporter Shane Scalfaro.
Yeah, Mata, we saw a heavyweight battle between the Falcons and Blue Lions, 2 teams who have had big turnarounds and huge improvements from last season. Both of these teams have some explosive offenses and shutdown defenses. Washington Courthouse is averaging 41 points per game thanks to their gunslinger quarterback and star receiving duo, including their all-state tight end. On the other side, Minford has been averaging over 42 points per game while allowing only 11 points per game on the defensive side. The Falcons are also in a crucial position trying to keep their footing in the playoff race. Washington Courthouse started with the ball and pushed themselves down the field. Quarterback Troy Thompson found Tanner LeMaster on the slant for the touchdown. Then it was Minford's chance to answer, but a fumbled snap would be recovered by Washington. Minford wanted the ball back, and the fumble from Trayvon Jackson would do just that. But Minford was forced to punt the drive away. Thanks to a big catch from Caleb Brown, Washington would be in the red zone again. The drive would be capped off with a touchdown catch from Isaiah Haythcock to extend their lead. The Minford offense struggled more as Peyton Cottle throws a pick to Trayvon Jackson. One play later, Thompson would find LeMaster again for the touchdown. With another Minford punt, Trayvon Jackson would add a rushing touchdown to his stat line and extend their lead. The Falcons gave themselves one more chance, however, as they were knocking on the door of the end zone. Washington said nope as they pick off Cottle again to end the half. Washington dominated on all sides of the ball, showing why they are a team to be feared and winning this game 42-0. This game flew away from the Falcons and they were just unable to catch up. Washington Courthouse overpowered them to pull out this big win.
This Minford defense gave up more points than usual. What was different tonight, Shane?
Mata, the Blue Line offense just looked like too much for the Falcon defense. It seemed like everywhere you look, everywhere you go, Washington had a big play ready and they were unmatched against the receivers for Washington.
So Shane, what were the big things that stood out to you about the Blue Lions?
Well, for one thing, this team has some big guys. Their all-state tight end in Tanner LeMaster is 6'6" and he overpowers people. They make opposing teams look small compared to them. Another thing is they hit hard. They are not afraid to tackle, lay the smackdown on opponents, and their sheer physicality makes you not want to play them.
Shane, we're about to see Jackson in our game of the week, but does Washington have a chance to take the FAC?
Mata, when I say they absolutely do, I mean it. This team dominates on both sides of the ball and shuts people down. This is week 4, and they already have 2 shutouts under their belt. They have the power to match up with anyone and should be considered a top team in the FAC this year. With a loss from Minford, however, the pace is picked up for the SOC title.
You know, it sounds like the fierce competition is only getting hotter for these 2 teams. Thanks for the great work, Shane. Game of the week is still ahead, but we've also got reporters at 4 digital games around the region providing digital content. To give us a sneak preview of our digital games, we welcome Jack Demler back to the show.
Jacob, we have seen some intense interconference matchups that could indicate what's to expect for the weeks to come. But we start with a story out of Waverly, where one junior varsity player is facing serious medical concerns. Freshman long snapper Blake Osborne collapsed after the Tigers JV game last week. He had sustained a life-threatening injury to the head. Osborne underwent emergency surgery to remove part of his skull to alleviate pressure off his brain. And the only thing Blake asked the doctor was, will I be able to play this season? Support for his family has brought a whole community together. The Osbornes say they've received an outpouring of love, prayers, and support. Blake returned home Thursday and was reunited with his team before tonight's game. The family was also honored at midfield just before kickoff as a way to uplift the community.
To show the family that the Waverly football is a family. I mean, they want to take care of them and do whatever we have to get him back, and hopefully he does well.
But let's get into the action from this one. Both teams have started the season hot, but we're looking to bounce back from Week 3 losses. Star Cavalier linebacker Tavian Galloway was able to lead Chillicothe defense to contain Waverly star running back Jace Hurd to less than 100 yards. And Cavs running backs Max Lee tallied 110 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on 12 carries to help lead the Chillicothe to a 42-12 victory. Now taking a trip up US 23, we've got a rematch from last year's SVC title game between Piketon and Zane Trace. The Pioneers were ranked in the first edition of the AP polls, and they showed why tonight. Zane Trace exposed the weakness of Piketon's run defense, exploding through open field, leaving no doubt behind, and going on to win 38-20. And now we head to Heath, where the Bulldogs start a difficult stretch of games. They welcome in Granville, who have won 8 of the last 10 meetings between these teams. Behind Tyler Ernstenberger's outstanding performance, Granville won 35-12. Ernstenberger went 19 for 34 with 221 passing yards and 1 touchdown. The tandem running back of Matt and Mickey Shabkowski totaled 193 yards and 3 tutties. And finally, we head to Union Local, where 2 senior-heavy teams meet up with hopes of staying undefeated. Union Local came out hungry as they led the Huskies 39-14 heading into the lockers, and they didn't look back. The Jets defense shut out the Huskies in the second half, and it was also thanks to Jackson Price's 238 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Union Local repeats their 4-0 start for the second straight year, taking down Harrison Central 45-14.
Wow, Jack, what a performance from Union Local's running back Jackson Price. I mean, he finished that night with a whopping 238 rushing yards. No doubt he's the key player to getting right back on track for Union Local.
Yeah, Jacob, and not to mention, that was just a snippet of the action. So don't forget, you can catch up on all the action from our digital games by checking us out on Twitter and Facebook. You can also find out the best plays and the best shots from the best games by checking us out on Instagram. And if that's not enough, we've even got our own TikTok. You can also find all our written recaps on woub.org/gridiron. Whatever you need, we've got you covered.
Thanks, Jack. And now for our Game of the Week. FAC reporter Zach Mothersbaugh joins us to break down a playoff rematch from last year as the Jackson Ironmen are looking to right the ship, taking on the Western Brown Broncos.
Yeah, Mata, with Western Brown scoring at least 54 points in all 3 games they've played this season, it looks like Jacob Winters and the Ironman offense are going to have to put a lot of points on the board if they want to get back on track. And it's going to take a lot of help from the crowd to help pump enough energy into the Ironmen to hang that many points. Luckily, the fans will be plentiful, as the Ironmen created a fund last winter to allow all students free admission to all sporting events. 2 weeks ago was the first time students got free admission to Alumni Stadium, as the fund was started after fall sporting events. This was an incredible move by the Jackson community, and athletic director Pat Stevens and principal Tyler Swackhammer have seen this kind of gesture over and over.
You know, anytime we can involve kids in something positive in our school and in our community and put them in front of our student athletes that hopefully will be role models.
If you spend any time in this community, you know how well they support. When we have needs here, our community is outstanding in helping us fill those needs.
Our community is unmatched when our kids need something. It was never an if this was going to happen. It was a how long can we make it happen? How quickly can it happen? But there was never a question of if this was going to get off the ground.
It was the biggest and most packed I've ever seen it. With home field advantage, it's always going to hype up our boys and make them perform better, you know, especially when they're on defense and you're making the other team go off the ball. You know, they're going to love it. These are my boys, and, you know, I'm always going to support them, but with everyone else here, I'd say coming to the games is going to make them feel how that connection shared, you know? So football really brings a lot of people together. Sports bring people together. So whenever you can come to one of these games and feel all this energy, you're going to love it.
You know, Zach, it's always awesome to see communities like this rally and provide that experience for their students. But what makes it so special for the crowds this week?
Well, Mata, the 2-seeded Jackson Ironmen, a team on an 8-game win streak, had that snapped by the Broncos. That was the second loss of the season to Western Brown for the Ironmen. At 1-2 on the season, Jackson needs to put another one in the win column to prove they can beat good teams in the playoffs. It'll be a tough test, however, against a team with last year's leading passer in the nation, who's leading a team with 17 straight games of 30 or more points, which is first in the state. It was a huge game for the Ironmen as they are looking to get revenge for last year's playoff loss and get back on track this season. And it started out well for Jackson, already up 7-0. Jacob Winters proves he can get it done on both sides of the ball, taking this pick all the way to the house for his second touchdown. Next drive, Drew Novak proves why he was the nation's leading passer last year, taking a few hits in the backfield and throwing a dime to Matthew Fry for the first points of the game for the Broncos. After a Jackson score, Novak would come back with 2 straight huge touchdowns to Fry, both from more than 40 yards away, and this one here would tie it up at 21, where it would stay until halftime. First drive out of the half for the Ironmen, Cade finds a crease through the left side of the line and scampers 16 yards all the way to the end zone to start the scoring in the second half. Then the Cade Wolford show continues as he breaks a toss off the right side from near midfield and finds the end zone again on a long run to put Jackson back up. Skipping late into the fourth quarter on a crucial 4th down, with the Ironmen up 6, they are able to stuff the Broncos on 4th down. Jackson would run the clock out on the next drive and take this game 41-35. Before tonight, Western Brown had 8 straight wins against FAC teams, and a lot of that was on the shoulders of Drew Novak, but that streak ended today.
Now, Zach, Drew Novak has been a huge name in that in his league for a little while now. Can you tell me about him and how Jackson contained him?
Well, Mata, Drew Novak seemed to have a sink or swim night tonight. They had 2 picks and a fumble on the game today, but he also threw a number of beautiful passes. He makes it incredibly difficult to stop him when he's on his game, but Jackson took advantage of all the mistakes he made.
Now, Zach, you told me Cade Wolford missed a playoff game against the Broncos. What impact did he make today?
He's always a go-to guy in this offense, and he was missed dearly last year. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, including one from near midfield, and set up Jackson with a long reception early in the game. Wolford is a very versatile player with more than enough ability to line up in the backfield or split out wide. It's a big help for Winters and to have this guy on offense.
Now, Zach, could you tell me what's next for Jackson as we move forward in their season?
Well, they're going to have to face Wheelersburg this coming week, and then it's on to all conference play for them. And against Wheelersburg, it's going to end a rough stretch of out-of-conference play.
Tonight was a
different approach for both offense, but the Broncos ran a lot of spread, and they let Drew Novak do his work. They had a prolific passing offense that is tough for any high school defense to contain, but the Ironmen like to do a lot of their work on the ground and run play action off of it. Their game works the best when the opposing defense has to stop the run, and Kay Wolford and Eli Browerman did a great job finding holes and breaking tackles when given the ball.
All right, now let's go to that Wheelersburg matchup next week. Can you tell me a little bit of what we might see from Jackson going into that game?
Well, we'll see Jackson continue their ground and pound game like they have tried all season, and they will, of course, give Jacob Winters the ball off play action after that, but it's going to be a huge game with a big atmosphere for the Jackson Ironmen, as that is going to bring them into conference play, and they're going to need a lot of energy to keep their season the way it is after they turned it around against Western Brown.
Now, they started the season 2-2. Can you talk a little bit about their playoff hopes having a rough end of the schedule?
Well, Jackson seems to come into every season hoping that they're going to get into the playoffs and expecting to get into the playoffs. So after they went 2-2, there was maybe a little bit of a scare, but they will continue to keep the energy, to keep their foot on the gas into these rest of these games.
Thanks for the great work, Zach. And that's all the time we have for tonight, but we will be back next week with more football from the 740. Remember to check out our socials for content tomorrow on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and woub.org/Gridiron Glory. Until then, remember, there's nothing better than Friday nights and Gridiron Glory.